Okay, hi grade 8s. So today's lesson is section 8.4. We're going to look at two different topics, combined percents and percent of a percent. So I've broken it up into, this is part A and this here is part B. Just to quick review, in section 8.3 we learned about percent of a number. So for example, 60% of the students at Fraser Heights have a cell phone. Let's say there's 1,400 students. So what is 60% of 1,400, right? And we turned it into a decimal, multiplied it by the number to find the number of students. So today's lesson, where we're dealing with percent of a percent, for example, would be, okay, 60% of the students at Fraser Heights own a cell phone. 50% of those students have an iPhone. So what percent of students of Fraser Heights carry an iPhone? So we'll get into some problem solving in a bit. Let's look at just calculating percent of a percent. I've listed the steps involved here. Change both percentages into decimals, multiply the decimals together, and then change the answer back to a percentage. So let's practice this skill and then we'll try some problem solving questions. So what is 120% of 82%? So we need to change both of them into a decimal. So we divide by 100. Hopefully you have the hang of this now. I'm just going to, I'm not going to show that step. So 1.2 times 0.82, and that is 0.984. Okay, so we multiplied the decimals together, and then we have to multiply it by 100 so that we get 98.4%. Okay, example B, what is 48% of 0.8%? So step 1 is to change both of these percentages into decimals. So 40% becomes 0.4. 0.8%, so we divide it by 100, we move the decimal over 2 spots, becomes 0.008. Okay, step 2, we multiply the two decimals together using our calculator, so we end up with 0.0032. And then the third step is to change our product into a percentage. So we multiply it by 100 and we end up with 0.32%. Make sure that you include the percentage sign in your answer. So you can pause the video here if you want and try example C on your own, and then double check your answer. So in example C here, we have 38.5%. I'm just going to rewrite that as a decimal. So what is 38.5% of 50%? So step 1, change both of the percentages into decimals, dividing them both by 100. So 38.5% becomes 0.385. And 50% becomes 0.5. We multiply the two decimals together to get an answer of 0.1925, and then we multiply the product by 100, and we end up with 19.25%. Okay, example D. I wanted to show you visually what we're doing. So shade in a hundreds grid to model 80%. So let's shade in 80%, so 80 squares. So there's 80%. We've done that step there. Next, shade 50% of the 80%. So with this 80%, we want to shade half of it, and that would be, how many squares would that be? That would be so we shaded in half of the 80%. Case, which is, well, it looks like it would be 40%. So I'm thinking it's going to be 40%, and let me just double check my answer using a calculation. So what is 50% of 80%? Well, I change both of them into decimals. 0.5 times 0.8, which is 0.4. Multiply it by 100, and we end up with 40%. Okay, so there's a great visualization to see 50% of 80%, which is 40%. So let's try some problem-solving questions with this skill. Okay, so this one here, only about 29% of the total surface area of Earth is made up of land. So 29% is made up of land, and of that land, only 38.4% is used as agricultural land. Approximately what percentage of Earth's total surface area is agricultural land? So what we're really looking at is, what is 38.4% of 29%? So that's the question that we're dealing with. And what, so we use the skill that we just learned. We turn both of them into decimals. So 0.384 times 0.29, and then we multiply our product by 100, and we get an answer of 11.14%. So we can say that 11.14% of Earth's total surface area is agricultural land. Okay, question B. About 2.5% of all the water on Earth is fresh water. Okay, and about 70% of this fresh water is permanently frozen in glaciers. So what percentage of all the water on Earth is the fresh water in glaciers? So what we're looking at is, what is 70% of 2.5%? So we take our two percentages, turn them into decimals, multiply them together, and multiply the product by 100, and we get 1.75%. So we can say that 1.75% of all water on Earth is fresh water in the glaciers. Okay, so that's part one of the lesson, dealing with percent of a percent. And let's look at part two of the lesson, which is combined percents. Okay, so for combined percents, this is going to lead us into our section 8.5, which is dealing with sales, discounts, and taxes. And there's actually two different ways. Typically, I only show you one method right now because I want to keep things as simple as possible. But for this part here, I did want to show both methods, and I want you to be comfortable using both methods. So in example A here, we have 120. It's increased by 15%. What is the new number? So in method 1, what we would do is we would add the percent change to the original number. So what is 15% of 120? So we would turn the 15% into a decimal, multiply it by the number, and we get a value of 18. So that's 120 is increased by 15%. That means 120 is increased by 18 units, whatever the might be. And then to find the new number, we would take 120 and add it to 18. So we end up with 138. So when 120 is increased by 15%, the new number is 138. Okay, and then in the second method, what we can do is we can combine the percent change, which was 15%, with 100 and calculate the new percentage. So for example, we would take 100% and add 15% to it, which is 115%. And now we'll turn that percentage into a decimal. And we will multiply 1.15 by 120. So it includes the 120 already in the answer. And when you put that into your calculator, you end up with 138. So two different ways to get the same answer. Example B, I'll use both methods here as well. So 88 is decreased by 19%. What is the new number? So I'll do method 1 here. So we take 19%, turn it into a decimal, multiply it by 88 to find our how much it's been decreased by. So we end up with 16.72. And here, 88 is decreased by this number here. So our new number would be 88 take away 16.72, which is 71.28. Okay, and in method 2, we're going to combine the percentages. So here, because we have a decrease, we're going to take 100% and we're going to take away 19% so that we have 81. And then turn that into a decimal, multiply it by our number of 88, and we end up with 71.28. Okay, so you can use either method. It's just good to know how to use both methods. So you can pause the video, try example C on your own. Okay, so here I've showed both method 1 and method 2. We need to find the percent of 144, so we turn that into a decimal, and because it's being decreased, we would subtract that number. And in method 2, we find we combine the percentage first, and we subtract 27% to give us 73%, and we divide it by 100, multiply it by 144. Okay, so that's the skill. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do two problem solving questions. I'm going to just use method 1 here. You're welcome to use method 2 as well and see if you and come up with the same answer. So we have an initial value of 1750. It's first decreased by 45%, and then the result is increased by 31%. What's the new value? So step one, it's decreased by 45%. So let's calculate the number at that point. So we take the percentage, multiply it by the number, and we get a value of 787.5. And then because it's being decreased, we subtract this from the initial value. And we get a value of 962.5. Okay, so that's step one. Our initial value was decreased by 45%. So now we have this as our value. Then the result, so this here is our result, is increased by 31%. So in step two, it is increased by 31%. So we need to find what 31% is of our new value here. Which is 298.375. And then because it's being increased, we add it to this value here. I apologize, this is a bit of a dry question here, but just so you can learn the process. And we get a final answer of 1260.9. So this is a two-step question here, right? You have to first decrease the value by 45%, find your answer, and then increase that answer by 31%. So you can try B on your own and just then double check your answer with me. Number of students at a school is currently at 1,200. School officials predict that the number of students will increase by 9% next year, but then drop by 12% the following year. So how many students will be at this school 2 years from now? So let's look at next year first. It says that it will increase by 9%. You know what I'm going to use method 2 here. So 100% plus 9% is 109%. Method 2 is quicker. So turn that into a decimal, 1.09 times 1,200, and we get 1,308 students. Okay, and then the following year, we have a decrease by 12%. So we're going to take 100% and we're going to take away 12%, which gives us 88%. Okay, so we turn the 88% into a decimal, and now we multiply it by the students that we had here in the previous year. And we end up with 1,151 students. So 2 years from now, there will be 1,151 students. Okay, thank you.